Imagine being such an arsehole that you are remembered by history as Charles the Bad. The Charles to which I refer was the ruler of the region of Navarre, and a few other bits of what we would call modern-day France. He thought that inheriting the crown to Navarre would mean that his claim to the throne of France as a whole would be recognised, but this was not to be, as his claim came from his mother, and this was a big no-no back in the 14th century. The crown of France, instead of passing to Charles, passed to Philip V's son, John II, also known as John the Good. As you can see, this story is only going one of one ways. Charles, throughout his life, spent a lot of his time trying to claim what he thought was his rightful place on the throne of France, through many murders and many betrayals. See, this period was right at the heart of the 100 Years' War, and Charles switched sides in this conflict, betraying both Edward III of England and John the Good, who was also, as it happens, his father-in-law. At one point when England and France made peace, Charles tried his absolute best to restart the war, and caused havoc and mayhem in Paris. I don't have time to tell you about all his duplicitous schemes and plots, but they were numerous and not a single one of them worked out. He ended up being the laughing stock of Europe, not only because he was a bad guy, but he was also incredibly bad at being a bad guy. I hear you asking yourselves, why is the alcohol, with emphasis on the alcohol, historian talking about this total tit of a king? What does this have to do with booze? Well, his death has a lot to do with booze, but not in the usual way of medieval monarchs drinking themselves to death. This one is far more interesting and way more gruesome. In 1387, Charles was bedridden and severely ill. Doctors were summoned and they prescribed a rather peculiar treatment. At night, the king was to be sewn into a linen shroud that had been soaked in brandy, so that the curative properties of the alcohol could cure him. What happened next is fairly horrible. The maid charged with sewing him into this cocoon of alcohol-soaked fabric couldn't find a way to cut the loose thread. And when she decided to use a candle, whoomph. Or, as a medieval historian wrote, "By the pleasure of God, or of the devil, the fire caught to his sheets, and from that to his person, swathed as it was in matter highly inflammable." What a way to go. Cheers.